This week's conversation with Counted Canvas designer Wendy Moore is made possible by CyberPointers. Want to develop your needlepoint skills? Want to learn how to do needlepoint? Don't have an American Needlepoint Guild chapter near you? Can't attend monthly meetings? Then you should consider CyberPointers, the online chapter of the American Needlepoint Guild. All meetings, classes, lectures, and workshops are conducted online so you can enjoy them from home when they fit your lifestyle. CyberPointers offers a packed schedule of activities, most with top designers and teachers in the needlepoint community. Let CyberPointers help you enjoy the amazing world of needlepoint by joining today at cyberpointers.org. Thanks to CyberPointers for sponsoring this week's show, and now enjoy our conversation with Wendy Moore. Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Cindy Baldwin.
And you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artist this week, Wendy Moore of Wendy Moore Designs. Wendy, welcome.
Hello.
We are going to be doing some drooling over these designs. This is so much fun. Yeah. This is. I think I say that essentially every time, but when it comes to counted canvas work, this is mind-blowing stuff. Really gorgeous. Yep. Well played. I love the you learned embroidery from Grandma Mert.
Grandma.
Yeah.
They lived with us on the farm, and she was into knitting and stamped embroidery, basically.
Oh.
And so I learned the lazy daisy and the French knot and the stem stitch and the cross stitch. And she taught me about how to ladder cross stitches, and where you stitch all one direction, then you come back and cross them all.
Okay.
But that was before I was 6. And after six, school took over, and I was an academic the rest of school. So it started early, but I guess it never leaves you.
No. I think, we've talked to so many people that have all learned at an early age or were exposed to it. And then life moves on, and then you come back to it at some point. But it gets in you. Mm-hmm. It's like a seed. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a habit of taking on all-encompassing passions, and they kind of cancel each other out eventually. So, but I guess this one has come full circle.
That's all right. But then, so you go to school, and how many people have we talked to in the past couple of months who have done some form of costume design? It's a bunch of them.
A bunch, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that we've hit this vein of costume designers. But you went a master's degree in costume design,
right? Mm-hmm. Yes, I discovered.
What takes you down that path?
Well, it started at about age 6. I'm a large woman and always have been, and my mother was 6 feet tall. And so she sewed. And so if I wanted something new, she said, okay, I'll sew the side seams and I'll make you a dress if you'll hem it. And if you'll sew the buttons on. And next it was, if you sew the side seams and the shoulder seams, I'll set the sleeves. Because I was going to a Catholic school where we had to wear dresses. We didn't wear uniforms, but we had to wear dresses. So she said, if you do the side seams and the shoulder seams, I'll put the sleeves and the zipper in, and we'll go on with another dress. So she taught me how to sew. I hated it. I hated the fact that I had to sew, but I learned how to sew. And then it wasn't until I was a senior in high school, I was going to be a pharmacist. I was an academic. I love science. I hated math, but I love science, and was going to be a pharmacist. Well, then I took a theater class in high school. And at that, as they say, is that I found my passion.
Oh.
But I wanted to be a stage manager. And I was told when I
Oh.
got into college, I went to college to become a high school teacher, actually, of speech and theater. Well, I realized I couldn't handle high school kids. I couldn't handle junior high school kids. So I flipped over to the professional side, and I was told that women didn't stage manage professionally.
Of
And the
course not.
guy, the gentleman that I was talking to, the who supposedly had a lot of outside experience in the real world, said to me, Wendy, what would you like to do for the next 10 years? What grunt work would you be willing to do for the next 10 years? And he said, carry lighting equipment up and down a ladder, bossing actors around, or sitting behind a sewing machine. And I thought, well, I can do sitting behind the sewing machine. So I went into costume design. Well, as you read, I kind of had an interesting pathway, but when I landed on the West Coast, I realized that all the best stage managers were women in the
Oh.
professional world. But I
Oh.
had already invested 12 years of
Yeah.
education into costume design, so I stayed there. So
How does and we have not asked this question of all the people we've talked to who've done costume design. How does that world work? Do you are you in on a production right from the beginning in terms
we're
of
part of we're part of, and this is why I call myself a social stitcher, because theater is a collaborative art. A director has a vision, but everybody works together and has to know what everybody else is doing in order to make the best of their part in it.
mm-hmm.
And so
Hmm.
we have from the very beginning, a director will come in with, I want to do Hamlet, but I want to set it in Nazi Germany. So that's his vision. Well, then you all talk about how can we best do that? How can we best make that work? Um, the scene design is usually a little bit different, but costumes, we have to listen to the director. We have to listen to the playwright. We have to have our own vision, and we have to know what our actors need and what our actors want and look best in. And
Oh.
all of that kind of blends together to come up with this collaborative thing that you go to the Guthrie or you go to Broadway and you sit down there and you're just gobsmacked that it all works. And the best ones are because they all listened to each other and no one was fighting for a supreme position. And so I learned very young and very early that your art is your vision is your own, but your art is not. It belongs to everybody else around you that helps create it. So
So then that helps me better understand an Oscar for costume design or a Tony for costume design, if they have those, I don't know, why that's such a big deal then, because you are
Hmm.
actually part of the art form that shows up on stage or on screen very
yeah, and
much.
it just so
Yeah,
happens
wow.
that person who gets the Oscar or gets the Tony, one, either they were spotlit, like the Lion King on Broadway was very different. It was all about puppets and giant mannequin marionettes, that
Yeah.
type of thing. And so that's a spotlight of a costume, costume person gets spotlit in that case. But sometimes they get the Tony because it was absolutely perfect for the set, for the play, for the actor, for the vision. And
Oh.
they most perfectly fit what goes on. And I think I was always willing to let my art be last and let everybody's else art be part of what I brought to the stage. In fact, I was better at creating someone else's design than I was actually creating my own designs.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
If
interesting.
you handed me a pretty picture, if you handed me a picture of a Vera Wang or some famous fashion designer, I could copy it.
Hmm.
Okay.
So that I was the technician that could make things work. So
Okay.
I think
Right.
that's why my designs, if you get underneath even my needlepoint designs, there's a technical aspect to them that is where my head lies, and the art comes out because I make the technical aspect work.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
So
a
you have the,
problem solver. I've always been a problem solver.
oh,
And in
okay.
fact, people say I was probably a mechanical engineer in a former life.
Mhm.
Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. So then when you you're doing a production and then you get an idea of what the director wants and so on and so forth, then do you have then another team or staff and you get together and execute the costumes, or is it pretty
Mhm.
much on you?
On the professional level, the designer works with the other designers, the scene designer, the lighting designer, and the director. The
Okay.
designer works at that level. Underneath them comes stitching pods, you might call them. There's a cutter, a first hand, and then one or more stitchers. So it's a unit that works together, and they are usually given portions of a design. Like one cutter might be given all of the chorus, and the
Okay.
cutter is the one that takes the design from the designer, interprets it, decides how they're going to make the costume. They're given the fabric, and then they make the patterns. The first hand takes that information and oversees the stitchers. So they're kind of like the assistant to the cutter. The cutter is the interpreter of the designer's vision, and they're pretty pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first hand oversees the rest of the production. And I was a very good cutter. I was the one that could look at any picture or listen to a designer and say, okay, what if we did it this way? Do you want box pleats? Do you want knife pleats? Do you want, how do you see us envisioning that picture? Because sometimes the designers were not sewers, or did not know how to actually
Oh,
construct it. They had a
okay.
vision, and then it was up to people who knew construction to then put that on stage. And
Okay.
so, plus, then there is the infrastructure group, the shop manager, the shop foreman, the buyer, the dyer, in big Broadway houses, they'll have a whole room full of people that do nothing but dye and paint costumes. And then there's
Wow.
the shoemakers, the cobblers, and all of this other kind of stuff. There's the bigger the world, the more branches there are. But when you're in a small college, you do it all.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I learned a lot of how to make do. I made leaves dance around Puck's legs without being able to see what the leaves were dancing on.
Oh,
We
Okay.
nice.
took, if you've ever seen Christmas trees come off the truck when they've come down from the forest, they're wrapped in
Right.
a mesh.
Yeah.
I made a
Mhm.
pair of pants out of that mesh and then sewed quilted leaves on that mesh. And when they were on stage, you couldn't see the mesh. All you saw
Oh,
were the
wow.
leaves dancing around his feet. So, I
Oh,
mean, you
neat.
get asked crazy things, and it's
Yeah.
problem solving at its craziest, I think.
So
Mhm.
that is your science background then, and that analytical end of you got fed
Hmm.
through that
Yes.
whole process.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Solving a problem. How can I do this? And I think I'm just engineering. I think structurally, and my brain sees pattern, which is one thing
Mhm.
that has transferred into my needlework is I see pattern everywhere.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
see problems. I see three dimensions. I see diagonals. I am one of the few blessed with the ability to see diagonals,
Okay.
much to my students' dismay, because I design with diagonals a lot.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So,
Yeah.
what moves you to needlework? Did you just burn out? I mean, that's got to be
um,
stressful at some point.
when I made the move from the West Coast back to the Midwest, I'm from Wisconsin originally,
Hmm.
and right now I'm in Detroit. But my mother had a health scare, and when you're in small professional theater, you're making $300 a week. At least this was in the '80s. You don't
Mm.
fly home on $300 a
Right.
week.
Right.
So I decided I needed to relocate back to the Midwest so I would be at least within driving range.
Mm.
And so I
Mhm.
got the job here and I had been coming back and doing Shakespeare summer stock in Wisconsin. There's a very good outdoor Shakespeare theater
Yes.
in Wisconsin, American Players Theater. And I've been with them from the beginning. And so I was already back in the Midwest and got the job here in Detroit. And I kind of forgot your question.
Well, how did you transition? Did you just get tired of it?
Um, After having come here, and I was here for about
Sounds like you
4
couldn't make enough
years.
money, so you got out of it.
Well, I went back to educational theater, and in educational theater, you make a wage. You make a salary, so it basically is a living. But um, it wasn't burnout; it was personality clash. The gentleman that I worked for and I did not see eye to eye. And this happens in theater a lot. There's a lot of volatile personalities because everybody's an artist and everybody wants their spot in the
Yeah,
sun.
sure.
And he didn't particularly care for the fact that I was a strong woman in a strong woman's field and he was not. And anyway, I decided I got married while I was here. I met my
I'll tell
husband.
you.
He was in my one of my classes, was a student of mine
Oh
actually.
my.
But anyway, we got married and I was getting burnt out on the politics and on the volatility around me, emotional volatility. So he said, "We just got married. We can live on my salary. Let's, quit while you can." And
Oh.
I broke my leg badly 3 days later and had to give up the business.
Oh.
Oh.
And so being here in Detroit, he had a very good job. I'm working at another college and we didn't want to leave. So what do I do now? And I was doing kind of dabbling by doing a medieval Christmas pageant every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And one year, one of my assistants, this was about 2 years after I had quit theater, and she said, "I'm going to an EGA meeting. We're doing handpiece quilting. You want to come along?" I went along. I stayed, and 6 months later, I was an officer in the chapter. So, and that is, they say, is that. And I was a sponge because I realized that coming up in one and going down in two fed something
Uh-huh.
in my brain. And it was that problem solving. I could see the grid. I could play the grid. And I'm not as good at like thread painting and crewel and that type of thing. I'm not patient enough for that.
Okay.
But if I can come up in one and go down at two, give me black work, give me hardanger,
All day long. Yeah.
all day long. And then our chapter of our Mungwagan chapter of EGA was very much into white work, hardanger, the older, what we now call the older forms of embroidery. And then we got an influx from the north of Detroit. I live in southern part of Detroit. I mean, south of Detroit. We call it downriver affectionately because it's down the Detroit River. And it's the more of the production line part of town, the middle class or the blue collar area of Detroit.
Right.
North of Detroit is more corporate. Well, one of their chapters folded and they came down to Mungwagan and they were mostly counted canvas.
Oh.
And so we brought in the counted canvas thing. And once I got into that, I mean, my goodness, I couldn't stop. And I look at a stitch and I don't see alternating scotch. I see, well, what if you took the three stitches in the middle and turned them into a different color? You get a zigzag. Oh, wait a minute. But if you double cross that and do this, you can get this. So I'm kind of notorious for not leaving well enough alone, is what they say. Wendy doesn't leave well enough alone. She plays until she gets something that no one would have ever thought of.
Yeah. That's so fun. I grew up in Clio, north of Flint. I was born in
Oh,
Flint, grew up in
wow.
Clio. So, yeah, so when you talk about downriver, all that stuff comes back to, yeah, I remember it from, people I knew through school and college. And yeah, I know the area. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
Wow.
about as far south as you can get. I'm right off the Huron River. So
Okay.
if I cross the river, I'm in Monroe County. So I'm about as far from Detroit as I can get and still be called part of the Detroit Metro.
Yeah. So so it's so interesting then. So this whole thing, once you get exposed to counted canvas, then I can see your science orientation locks right in. You're science and
Right.
math then. Yeah. And
And
now
I'm what they all called a turbo stitcher, because I see the pattern. I don't have to sit and count the chart. I
uh
don't have to sit and look at the chart and be married to the chart. Once I see the pattern, well, that makes sense, and away you go. And
Mhm.
so I'm considered a turbo stitcher, but I was still only a social stitcher. I I don't go home and I don't wake up in the morning saying I've got 3 hours that are not committed today. What am I going to do? I'm going to sit and stitch. I don't think that way. Never
mhm.
have. Because home was where you crashed and did nothing. In theater, you're not home very often.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
when you went home, you did absolutely nothing. Either read a book or did nothing. And I still have a hard time thinking about of doing something with my hands while I'm sitting at home, because my brain doesn't want to do anything when it's at home. So however, now I've really gotten used to kitting and making kits and getting shipping out the door. That's kind of become my life these days. So
Yeah. Yeah, the administrative end of any
I was
business.
not
Yeah.
prepared for that. Actually, not when Debbie Steeler took me by the hand and said, "Wendy, you need to be a designer and you need to be teaching." I was not quite prepared for the contractual end of the business.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my brain wallows a bit as we go along. I'm learning how not to say yes to everybody that asks, and I
Yeah.
learn how to better appropriate my time.
Yeah. When she said you need to be a designer, did that click with you, or did you resist that, saying I can't do
Uh,
that?
no, I didn't, because I am a teacher. I was born a teacher. I've been a teacher all my life, even through all of the theater. I was better in teaching venues than I was anywhere else. I
Okay.
used to teach my kindergarten class how to stack blocks.
Hmm.
I would like, and I'm a kindergartner, and I'm teaching them how to stack blocks because I knew a better way to stack blocks. Um, so she and I got to talking. She and was doing a pilot class with Gail Cerna. Was
Mm-hmm.
She had
Mhm.
brought her pilot class, and Gail has classes in her house. She has a beautiful house set up for stitching. And I went up and took the class because I had never taken a Debbie Steeler class before. And we got to talking because I live 20 minutes from the airport. And Gail lives way up north, up in Rochester, up beyond Auburn Hills. And so Debbie came back with me the last night of class and stayed with me so I could get her to her 8 o'clock flight.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about what I used to do, the fact that I was in theater, and I had all these wonderful ideas. And she said, "Well, then why in the heck aren't you teaching? Why aren't you designing and teaching?" And she said, "I just so happened to be involved in NAN."
Yeah.
And brought me
Uh-huh.
kicking and screaming into NAN. And so I actually went into the NAN program kind of green. I mean, I had the training of being a teacher, so I didn't have to learn how to teach. It was how to bring what I was learning about needlework
Mm.
Mhm.
into that realm. And I think I approach design and teaching a little differently than most.
Okay.
Um, just because of I didn't come to it as a legacy stitcher.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
came to it as an artist who happened to discover that needlework was the venue for my art form.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it satisfies just the whole idea of designing. And I even like writing stitch guides and doing the
No.
directions and making kits.
No, not
And
that.
oh yeah, I do. My OCD has an outlet, and if you ever get a chance to see one of my kits, you'll understand.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I was already doing things like somebody would say they had, well, I've got this Pat Mazu stocking. Will somebody teach this for the chapter? And I was already doing that.
Uh-huh.
And so
Mhm.
she said, "Well, why aren't you doing your own designs?"
Mm.
And now she's at me for another reason. She grabbed me at the last NAN assembly, took me around a corner at the assembly, at the exhibit, and said, "Wendy, why aren't you stitching theater? Why aren't you using your theater training? Why?" She said, "You know." you know what I'm talking about. So, but it's something that I've been struggling with of my brain wants to be too literal. And I don't think people understand who Desdemona is in Othello for me to
Mm-hmm.
create a piece based on Desdemona. I have this idea of equating Shakespeare's heroines with forms of embroidery.
Oh,
Oh.
that would be so cool.
Oh.
Desdemona was done in by a white handkerchief, so she would be white work. Cleopatra would be
Mhm,
gold work because of all the gold, her gold
mhm.
accoutrements from Egypt. Um, and obviously, Kate from Taming of the Shrew would have to be crewel work.
Oh, what are you waiting
Um,
on? Let's go.
I just haven't figured out the venue, the way to get it out there.
Yeah.
And I think I finally discovered I'm going to do it more abstractly than portrait, done in portrait
Right.
form.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing a portrait though next year. One of my new pieces for EGA in Orlando is a portrait, but it's Miss Ruby, that the fascinating Miss Ruby. But I think I have found a way to do. I want to do a folded book of like
Mhm.
5-inch squares and make them kind of an abstract on the concept of this is the Desdemona square, but it's all based in whites.
Uh-huh.
And um, Ophelia from Hamlet dies in a flower bower. They see her floating down the river in a bed of flowers, so she would be ribbon embroidery. And I
Okay.
fortunately, my best friend is now one of the current ribbon embroidery teachers, Deborah Mitek.
Uh,
And so I want to do things like that and then create a folded book, so that you would do it as like in a series of 1-day classes and then put them all together.
oh my. Oh, that sounds like
Mhm.
fun. What left
So,
Yeah.
left left turn? What got you connected with Shakespeare? And I asked that because of all the classes I had in high school, all science and math, we had to take something else. And one of the classes, a semester class, was Shakespeare's Best Comedies with Mr. Stevens, one of the few teachers' names I remember. And but it was a complete release for those of us who were in the science and math end of
mhm.
things. I mean, it was complete outlier. But it introduced me to Shakespeare and really came to appreciate in just that semester what a tremendous storyteller he was
Mhm.
and the culture and all the things that go with it. And so I've always had an appreciation for Shakespeare. Not, it's not an addiction, but what draws you into that? What makes you connect with Shakespeare?
Well, I was first introduced to it in a high school English class. We had to read one of the plays. I don't remember what it was. And that particular semester, there was a national touring company going around to colleges, and we
Oh,
took a field trip to see Henry IV Part Two. I think it was Henry IV Part Two. And I fell in love with the sound of the rhythm, the musicality, because I was a music person. I
mm,
I play piano. I was in band. I was in choir. That was my kind of creative release from all of the academia that I was involved in. But I was a reader, and so I had read this one play and got involved in it, and I just loved the rhythm of it, the beauty of it, and then I started to dig kind of deeper into visualizing it. Then, when I went to college, I went to Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin in La Crosse, which is over on the Mississippi River. And one of the first plays that I became involved with was Midsummer Night's Dream.
mm-hmm.
And so I've been kind of following that Shakespeare. And then my last year of college, that's when American Players Theater opened.
Oh,
And
okay.
I got a chance
Oh.
to work there well, it was the second summer.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, I just fell in love with how he, through his words, created worlds, but was
Yeah.
also the glory of the word itself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're still using his phrases. I'm sure you've seen that meme, which is that big poster of all those phrases that we say on a daily basis that no one
Mhm.
realizes came from a
Came from
Shakespearean
him.
play at
Yeah.
some point.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And in fact, I love Shakespeare so much that when I had broken my leg and had to leave the business, my husband said, "Well, now what are you going to do?" And I said, "I think I want to go back to school and get my PhD in medieval lit and become a Shakespeare scholar."
Wow.
And I took a couple of extra lit classes and realized that I had to be creative on a daily basis. I could not sit behind a college desk and talk to students who didn't want to be in your class in the first place
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
and may never understand it when all I was doing was building costumes and sets and creating the world. And so that's when I discovered ceramics, and then did ceramics until I found needlework. And once the needlework came in, then that was my medium. It kind of took everything I knew and put it all into one art form, and um, really liked that, and I'm still here.
So
Who knew I
that's why you end up with needle and thread then. It just encompasses everything you enjoy.
Right. I understand needle and thread. I understand thread. I understand how fiber works, and the shine and the sheen and the nap and all of those kinds of crazy things that you learn eventually as you take classes. And my brain sees the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I sit with books all over when I'm designing. I have my library at my feet, and I'm pulling through books, but that's only a jump off point for me. And how can I manipulate that to create texture I want? And I've got a piece that'll be coming out that it's not new; it's an older piece, but I'm going to be teaching it in Orlando. That's all about composite stitches and
Okay.
layer
Oh,
upon
cool.
layer upon layer. In fact, that fleur de lis that you were talking about, my French lily, is nothing but composite stitches, one on top of the other. And
Uh-huh.
I expand things and I break them down and I put them back together. And instead of using one thread, I use five. Where when one is good, five must be better, right? And
Right.
so it all kind of comes together mentally for me, I think, which is why at 68 I'm just embarking on a crazy new career. So
That's all
who'd
right.
have thunk? Who'd have
That's all
thunk?
right. Eliminates boredom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and that's the thing about your designs is, I mean, just I've never stitched one, but just looking at the pictures, the layers you put in there to create
Mhm.
the texture and the light reflection, uh, it looks rather complex. I'm sure at some point it is, but
And I
uh,
think that's where my theater training comes from,
uh-huh.
is I can keep in mind the texture of the thread, the texture of what I'm trying to represent, the color that I'm trying to represent, the background stitching, the color of the canvas, because I always use a different colored canvas. I rarely stitch on white.
Oh.
And how do I make that all work to achieve some end? And that's what we do in theater. You take lighting, you take makeup, you take
Mhm.
acting, you take directing, you take
Mm-hmm.
costumes, and they
Mm-hmm.
all have to combine for that perfect moment on stage. And so
Mhm.
because they said, "How do you keep all of those kinds of things in your head?" And I said, "I don't have to think about them. They're all there all the time."
Yeah.
And I
Uh-huh.
think primarily, I was trying to think of it the other day, is between the composite stitch and color. Those are the two things that I use as my major tools out of my tool bag, is to um, I use composite stitching, and I am a colorist from day one. In
Oh.
fact, people around here they'll see something in a book, or they'll say something at a seminar, and they'll go, "Oh, those are Wendy colors," because I'm kind of crazy when it comes to color. I use them all, and I use them in weird ways. And they say, "But that works." And it's, well, yeah. My pyramid piece is all about three dimension. How can I get three? I always present myself with a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have to solve it with my needle and thread. And the pyramid piece was, how can I represent three dimensions in a two-dimensional space using needlework stitches? And you can see
And
that one up over my left shoulder on the
Yeah.
wall, the big gold pyramid.
Yeah.
Um,
it's very successful.
that
It
one is one of
looks
the successful ones. The other one is the one just off my right head. The other way, there we go, is the moon piece.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the piece that's everywhere. I think by the end of next year, everyone in the country who's ever picked up a needle will have taken that piece at some point in time. I can stitch it in my sleep, actually. But I'm doing a series of atmospheric pieces. I've got a new one that's kind of percolating on my think pot is the aurora borealis over snow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'll be
And this
beautiful.
one was the reflection of the moon on the water, and then the one that's on the side of the filing cabinet there is the sunrise reflection, and that was the first one. It's the sunrise over the water, and there's about 10 years between them, and you can see the sophistication level is there's 10 years between the sophistication level.
Yeah.
But I tend to solve things from a different point of view, I think, than most needlepoint designers or needlework counted canvas workers anyway, because I look at the end product first. I don't see it as a journey of stitching.
Mm-hmm.
I see it as a way to get to an end product, which is the artist's point of view as opposed to a stitcher's point of view. Because I will
So,
stitch some other, like I love to stitch Kathy Reese just for the zen of getting into a piece and stitching.
yeah.
And Jennifer Riefenberg's use of color just inspires me to no end. And though I don't do whimsy, I love the way that Don Donnelly solves in a whimsical fashion some design issues, things like that. But for me, it's how do I use what I know to create the best piece of art? So my
So,
pieces tend to be in the intermediate to advanced intermediate because I make you do things you don't know how to do yet, or you
Mm-hmm.
didn't know you knew how to do.
Yeah.
So
so do you kind of sketch out your design
right,
ahead of
there's
time?
the piece that's right there, right over my shoulder, is not a stitched piece. That's a rendering. So I actually do a full rendering, like I was doing a full piece of art first,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
and then I go to graph paper. And the big piece that's over my shoulder over this side. Nope, I'm over that side. The big piece. It was all about one shape. It was a Nan challenge. It's all about one shape. Or I really love art quilts, and my convergence piece, which is the one that's sitting in front of the filing cabinet over there, is about which are the illusion quilts.
Mm-hmm.
And the fleur de lis was supposed to be another three-dimensional piece until one of my stitching ladies that comes over for a sit and stitch said I was starting to add some metallic to it, getting a little sparkle, and I didn't know if I wanted to go there. And she said, "Oh, that looks like a pave brooch."
Oh,
So
Oh.
I started, then that's what that became. So then it was a matter of throwing in more metallic and more layers and more reflectivity and creating a pave brooch. It still has three dimensions, but it was a pave brooch. So I start with an artwork, and then the big color is key piece that's over my other shoulder was done in a weekend retreat and a piece of graph paper and colored pencils. And I
Hmm.
still draw the canvases based on my original line drawing on graph paper.
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
The best ones fall out of my head whole. It's like I had a teacher who used to call it building your egg. And you're very careful about building your egg, and you're building your egg. And then when you're ready to produce, you crack your egg and it goes on the paper, or it goes on the canvas, or it goes on it. And
Okay.
the ones that come out that way are my, I think, my best designs. The moon was one. Pyramids I didn't labor over. That came out whole.
Mm-hmm.
So
So when they come out whole, then it's I can't get it down fast enough. Like I have it. I got to get
yeah, or I've seen something like the piece that's this piece, which is going to be at Denver. Let's see. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it's based on the Fibonacci sequence,
Yeah.
and I had an idea. I've been kind of obsessed with making round holes out of square pegs and using Jean Hilton stitches to soften a square into a circle And how can I best use that? Well, that's how I get that piece. It's all done with corner crescents to create the heart
Oh.
and to create the mini shape, but it's based on numerically, kind of based on the Fibonacci sequence, the number sequence.
Yeah.
Or I'll get fascinated by a graphic I see on Pinterest, or somebody flashes it through Facebook, that a piece of art. Right now, I'm fascinated by an AI artist out of Italy who is doing these atmospheric reflections and fog and mist and whatnot with, so he manipulates photographs through AI and creates an art form. I've even asked him permission to reproduce one of his pieces in needlework. He hasn't gotten back to me, so it's still on my drawing table. But
Well,
um,
the thing that I enjoy about so many of your pieces is counted canvas naysayers will often say, well, counted canvas is just symmetrical, geometric, blah blah blah, and it's boring. But yours, particularly your pieces, are not at all. There's like the moon thing. I mean, that's a scene. That's a
yeah,
that's not a geometric anything. And within that are all the textures and the color shading and so on. But we're dealing with pieces that are not geometrics. They're not simple geometrics. They're layered. There's depth. There's shape. There's all kinds of things.
and there's an awful lot of compensation.
I'm sure of that.
And that my students might at that, and they say that my pieces are actually Italian. Can you imagine why they say it's Italian? In
No.
class, they create a lot of spaghetti.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Because you work a little here, and I'm on to the next
Yeah.
thing, because my classes tend to be gallops, because I try to cut, there's so much there. Even though that moon looks so simple and it's only a 6x7 piece, there's a lot of stitching in it, and a lot of layers to the stitching. And the silhouette of the tree is all done in crescent stitches and comma crescents, and the water is all done in corner crescents. And there are Bargello motifs in the sun, or in the moon, and darning patterns in the background. And so you look at it, doesn't look very complicated, because you're also seeing some light stitching, so you're seeing canvas through. But there's a lot of stitches in there. It takes me all of 6 hours to get through that piece, and they end
Oh,
up
sure.
with a ton of spaghetti. In fact, the pyramid piece I think is the king of spaghetti. And I've had students. I had this interesting. We talk about legacy stitchers. In one of my classes, I had a grandmother, a mother, and two daughters,
Oh,
all in
wow.
the same class. The two daughters one was like 27 and one was like 31. They were, in their careers already. They were mechanical engineers, and so was mom.
Mm.
And they were all in my class together. And it was the most fascinating thing, was to watch those two younger girls. Their goal was, could they get out of class without any spaghetti? So they'd sit during break and they'd have
Oh.
races to see if they could solve the spaghetti issue. So I'm considered Italian by those that understand spaghetti.
That's good. That's good. What about your teaching now? You teach live? Are you teaching online? Are you doing both? How are you approaching that
Um,
these days?
well, I have been, ever since I hit the circuit. I have been at National,
Mm-hmm.
at least A&G National, ever since I hit the circuit, which happened just before COVID.
Oh,
So my whole design career kind of started online, because I did one set of nationals before COVID, and then my designs were developed for online teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So anything I teach, I can teach via Zoom. So I don't travel well. I'm quite a large woman, and I don't travel well. I like to travel, but I just don't do airports well. And my 68-year-old knees will attest to that.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of Zoom, but I'm also a road tripper when it comes to my car. So if you're within 10 hours, I will drive.
Okay.
Um, but I do a lot of Zoom.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's because of the way my instruction packets are notoriously ultra large. I mean, if they're less than 50 pages, that is considered a lightweight packet for me. And I put everything on the page that I say in class. So they're very good for things like the groups IO, like Shining Needle and CyberPointers and things like that, because anything I was going to teach you in class is already on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do the Zoom. I probably, there will become a point where I won't be able to travel either between my health or my husband's health. So I will always try to do the nationals, but I don't do as much chapter traveling as others.
Yeah.
I don't really do shops because the shops here are mostly painted canvas at now. We've had a couple of the others, like Shea Pendrey's shop closed, and there was another one that was more counted canvas oriented, and the others now are kind of painted canvas oriented. And so I'm not a painted canvas stitcher. So I don't really do shops, but I've started doing a lot more of what I call at-large teaching, where somebody in my class will say, I really like that other piece of yours. I said, well, if you can get 6 people together, I'll teach it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not tied directly, I'm not tied to the 2 organizations, though that's your bread and butter. But I've got 2 or 3 coming up that I'm calling like at large, where they've gotten 12 people together that want to take that piece and do it via Zoom. So I had one class where I was teaching all the way from Hawaii to Australia in the same class.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah, so I get used to time zones. I have 3 clocks in here, and I set them according to the time zone that's mostly being taught in, and so that I can keep track of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know that feeling. Just doing this podcast, I've gotten quite good at tracking time zones and figuring out where people are at and what time of day we can do a recording. Yeah, it's
yeah. Well, I was born in Central. And then I moved to Rocky Mountain time because my first job after graduate school was Missoula, Montana. And then from Montana, I went to Seattle. And then I came back to Detroit, which is Eastern time.
Yep.
So I have relatives across the board. So I figure time zones pretty accurately, as long as they're, the contiguous 48.
Yeah. Talk about there are very few, if any, counted canvas people who are doing retail charts. Just about all that you guys are doing is teaching your newer designs that I've seen, and then we have a ton of painted canvas shops all over the place. Are you guys counted canvas? You're clearly staying busy enough. I mean, you're cranking out designs and apparently teaching quite regularly without having a retail aspect. It seems to be working well for counted canvas people.
Well, there are 2 avenues for us. There are a couple of teachers out there right now who are very active in the counted canvas teaching world, who came from retail. Debbie Rowley and Kathy Reese were both retail prior, and then decided that they needed. I think part of it is retail. There's the comings and the goings of retail, and so teaching kind of gets you out there, continuously. But then there are those of us like Tony Gertis and Jennifer Riefenberg and Curdy Biggs. Well, Curdy Biggs has a retail business. She started with Threedles, but there are several of us that are just purely counted canvas. And I fortunately don't have to make a living at it. So, but it can be done, but you just have to stay incredibly busy. And I think the exposure you get when you go to nationals. They keep asking us teachers, do you feel the need for Teacher Showcase? I can't tell you the number of contracts I've gotten from Teacher Showcase.
Oh.
And fortunately, the nationals tend to be centered to the country. So I have driven to many of them in recent years. And so I can take my portfolio, I can take that wall behind me to a Teacher Showcase and lay out everything in person, whereas people who do nothing but fly have found other ways, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or Debbie Rowley's gone to postcards, things like that, that
Oh,
you can get your
Yeah.
stuff at a teacher showcase. But I said, don't do away with teacher showcase,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because that's how you get back to the chapters,
Yeah.
Right.
especially if you
Exactly.
don't have the retail. And then it's word of mouth. You go and
Hmm.
do a sit and stitch, you belong to a couple of chapters, and Zoom has done this. Zoom has allowed you to belong to chapters all over the country.
Yeah.
So if
Right.
I belong to, like, I belong to CyberPointers or whatever, and I'm going to take that class in San Diego. Well, I'm at a Zoom sit and stitch, and somebody's showing you this great piece that Wendy Moore taught in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can our chapter do that?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So I think social media, and I tell my students, I said, post all you want on social media, as long as you give me credit for the design. You say right up front that it's my design or
Yeah.
Debbie Rowley's design or whatever, because
Right.
I've gotten contracts from Facebook, from
Mm-hmm.
social media
Hmm.
posts.
Yeah.
So
Is your teaching? I mean, are you pretty much teaching every week, or do you?
this last year, yes,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because you forget that, oh, it's just a Zoom class. You don't have to travel, but you still have to produce the kit. You still have to get it in the
Yeah.
mail. You have to ship, and you have to think of ordering. And I don't have to tell you the problems that ordering threads
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
presented itself. Trying to get what you want, and then if you can't get what you want, you have to research your substitutes, and so
Hmm.
the problem is the same whether I pack it in my car and drive it, or whether I sit in my office with the door closed and turn on my camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same. There's just about as much work. So I'm going to pull back and not do every weekend just because I have a weekend free. I'm not going to throw a class in there. But I in after national, pretty much stay busy until my last class this year is this weekend, is my last class
Okay.
for 2025, and I have been going nonstop since August,
Oh.
since New Orleans. I've been
Wow.
going
Hmm.
nonstop.
Oh.
Well, and you need some time in there to design.
Right, and I used to. And I've been designing in Florida. My husband and I, as a lot of retirees in the great northern clime, go south for the winter. And I have been a snowbird. Yes, I will admit to that. We've been snowbirds now for about 6 years, going to Florida for January and February, and that's
Hmm.
where my designs
Oh, okay.
have all come out, because, well, the part of it is deadlines. Your deadlines are January to February for the two national organizations, and so
Hmm.
that's where I get my creative juices, because I'm not dealing with everything else. I'm not worrying about my guild calling me and wanting me to teach a master class and all of that
Hmm.
kind of stuff, because I'm out of town. But I'm not going this year. So
Oh.
I will see what happens in the cold northern climes if my creativity is just as sparkling as it is poolside.
Hey, whole new venue of a
Yeah,
whole new vein of designs with
yeah. We just got 2 inches of snow, so
yeah.
we're already regretting not going to Florida.
Yeah, the color palette's going to shift to whites and blues, and yeah,
Well, I think it's the
There's
perfect time to do my aurora borealis over snow.
there you go. Yep,
right.
yep, yeah. So
Absolutely.
when it comes to designs, do you how many a year do you generally generate? Half dozen?
um, And no, I don't do that many. I probably
Okay,
do. I know I do at least two. I've been trying to do three so that I can offer new to both organizations.
okay,
Um, but sometimes I only get out the two, and then I will do a couple of ornaments, a couple of small little toss-offs for, like, my chapter wants, an ornament, or when designers across America from EGA wanted to feature me. They wanted an ornament that they could sell, so I designed an ornament for that. I just did
Hmm.
EGA's virtual. I did my Rennie's Garden, which is a take on Macintosh roses, and they
Yeah.
said, would you be willing to offer a needle book and scissor fob along with the box top.
Oh.
So I sat down and quickly designed a needle book, and and so I do small things like that off and on. So I would say I probably 3 to 4, but
Okay.
of the quality that you're seeing on the wall behind me, usually 2. There's usually
Okay.
2 big ones, and then maybe a 1-day and a couple of half-day classes, or reworking a bigger piece into a smaller piece, and doing that kind of reconstruction work.
Okay, so you do that then. Go back to an old piece and rework it in some way.
Or I take a piece out of it. The piece that's on top of the bookcase, on top of the filing cabinet in front of the fleur de lis, is called Red Rock's Bright Sun. And it was a 4-day piece because it's nothing but composite stitches, but it's a study in color and transparency and how you can blend pattern together on a line, and you get 2 different patterns when you blend them together, and what happens in the transparent part where the 2 of them overlap, how does it change? Those are the mathematical things that my brain gets into. But that piece was a much, much larger piece. And it has this, it's the first time I played with Jean Hilton stitches. It has a sun, and there is a giant Jessica. What you do one Jessica, then you build another one right up on top of it, right over the top. So it's like you turn the thing, 30 degrees, and then you do another Jessica in the same pattern over the top of it in a different color metallic. And and so I based my Red Rocks piece on that sun and a portion of the much larger piece, because the much larger piece was my expertise, my graduation piece from Nan. And you do something that's not intended to be a teaching piece, but everybody wanted to learn how to do that sun, and how do you do the transparency. I love the idea of transparent stitching, and then you cross them, what happens to the color, and then what happens to the pattern in the blended part. And that is the mathematician, that's the math part of me that comes out and says, how can we do this? And
oh my,
how can I butcher a stitch to make it work? Or how can I call it deconstructing a stitch in order to make it work.
Yeah. Oh, but what fun! What fun! Now, do you teach? Do you teach every year at the NAN event?
I had been. I'm not teaching this year, but and they were kind of upset that I didn't send in any proposal, but I had to take a break. So I not this year, but I do like every other year. I had for a while been there every year.
Yeah.
So I'm now a counselor in the certification program.
Okay.
I really enjoyed NAN. I believe in its mission. I believe in what they teach. They don't teach teachers what to teach. They teach you how to teach. They give you the tools to become a better teacher, not necessarily dictating a format or making you prove that you know your business. They give you the tools, like how to do PowerPoint presentations, how to get online, what's the best camera, what's the best projector. You have to remember that you have to have a projector that will broadcast, because I teach like a lot of us are doing now, with a camera and projector behind me instead of working on a whiteboard. And you have to have a projector that will bleed through a fully lit room, because you can't turn the lights off and have people stitch. So, things like that. Hard. And then how to do a lesson plan, and how to think about teaching, how do you organize a class period? You don't want to start with anything too complicated, and you don't want to end with anything too complicated. So, those are the kinds of tools that, as an academic, I appreciated. I felt like I was getting another master's degree. Is the way I approached it, was, master's classes. And for a master, so when somebody asked, I said, well, I have my master's in needlepoint, in, needlepoint education.
Yeah.
And so I firmly believe in it. So it's here in Detroit now.
Right.
And so I just that's part of my spring. That's kind of like the spring launch.
Right.
is once Nan happens, then I go until the middle of summer. And uh, but I'm now a counselor, and I really do appreciate, what the counselors did for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fortunate to have Tony Gertis and Diane Herman as two of
Oh.
my
Oh,
counselors,
yeah.
and so yeah, it was well worth it. If anyone wants to go into this business, it's well worth its weight. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's an organization. It puts in my head now. We need to do more with that organization, promote more of what they do, because they're kind of that in the background hidden thing that makes a huge difference in the hobby, the art form in general.
and they have a beautiful little kind of boutique seminar in the spring in
Yeah.
March, and they have a beautiful exhibit, the exemplary.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And because the goal is to teach teachers and to teach judges, and so they have this gorgeous and the place that we meet in is this kind of like boutique sized hotel. It's just a lovely little thing to do. But and right now they're being led by Tony Gertis. Tony Gertis is now the director of education,
Oh.
and
Okay.
she came up through the ranks like I did, and has worked her way. So she's now standing at the podium. So it is a delightful organization, and I think it certainly did me wonders, because I would not have been here had Debbie Steeler not taken me by the ear and dragged me kicking and screaming into Nan. I wouldn't be teaching.
Sounds like it's time for another show with Tony Gertis. Yeah. Sounds like we need to line her up again. Yep. So what's the next
Mhm.
design? We're going to run out of time here. What's the next design?
Well, I'm working on that Aurora Borealis
Okay.
over snow, and I really do want to explore that the heroines of Shakespeare
Oh,
in
yeah.
abstract. I have a Bargello set up for Romeo and Juliet at the balcony that
Ah.
I think is where I'm going to jump
Oh,
off, and so those are the two new things. But I love foliage. I had this whole series of botanicals where I take Bargello and manipulate Bargello motifs into flowers, and
Hmm.
that's what's over my shoulder. The one for
mhm.
Denver is the Rocky Mountain
Columbine.
columbines for Denver.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a rosebud. I've done an iris, and a poinsettia, and I want to continue working on that vein. But I love branches, and I'm thinking about doing another Christmas piece
Hmm.
of ornaments hanging in branches, but there's foggy trees in the background.
Oh.
I have more ideas. I could be teaching until I was 145 and not find everything that's in my brain at the moment. So
You need to go to Florida. Get some of those ideas down on paper.
from your mouth to God's ear, yes.
All right, Wendy, thanks so much. Tremendous artwork.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you sharing your whole story with us. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm glad to come to the world through you. So
Yeah.
and you do such great work for us. So thank you.
Well, thanks for that, and thanks to everyone for listening.